Thank you for joining us. This is going to be really good. For those seeing us on Facebook Live, if you want to join the conversation at the end, please hit the registration link I provided in the chat so you can ask questions and get the workbook. I'm going to really dig deep into the whole concept of the spirituality of leadership. And then we're going to talk about how it impacts individuals that you lead. So this is not a Bible study. There will be some scripture references. This is geared to individuals who are actually in the marketplace. You have a traditional job. You work in corporate America. You work out in industry, and you either are leading people or you're part of a team or you're inspiring to be a leader. If you are a leader in any sense of the word, that means you're a parent, a husband, a mother, you have children, you have family members, or you are someone that is a caretaker. The spirituality of leadership addresses all of these components. So, uh, the way that I want to start this conversation, I want to talk about the original point that I made last week. And when I said that leaders lead from their gifts and talents, but they also lead from the broken places. What that simply means is that all of us on here, you all have gifts and talents. There are things that we do that come natural to us. But also at the same time, there are things that we really struggle with. It also becomes a part of how we lead. And so when it comes to leadership, it doesn't matter if you are a parent or a spouse, or you're working in a department. If you don't deal with the things in your life on a constant basis, it will impact you and it will impact those who you lead. I said this and I'll say it before. It's very hard to tell people to go chase a mountain or to go up into a mountain or to lead people up in a mountain if you are afraid of heights, right? Oftentimes we lead from a place where we're really, really good, but when there are things in our life that challenge us, we revert to the things that make us afraid. When it comes to leadership, the hardest thing isn't getting the position or the title. The issue is when we get those positions and titles, the hard work is constantly dealing with the inward part of us. Last week we talked about spirit, soul, and body. In our spirit are the hidden places that people don't see, which cause us to make decisions within our soul, impacting the things we do in the more tangible place like our body. So we make decisions from a place that no one knows, and it manifests in decisions and actions, and those decisions and actions manifest itself in the natural. For example, if I'm afraid of heights, I'll act like I'm really, really good. But at the end of the day, in my heart, I'm afraid of heights. So I've come up with alternatives for me not to have to deal with climbing up heights. Okay. So we're going to start today with an activity. What I want you to do is take one hand, ball it up into a fist. Take your other hand and put it over top of that hand and squeeze it really, really hard. Now, try to open up your hand that balled up into a fist with your hand clenched on top of it. Try to open that hand. Now, you'll typically find that it's a little bit more complex to open up your hand when you have your fist covered with your hand like this, right? But now if I release my hand lightly and I try to open up my fist, what happens? It's easier to do that, right? That's the spirituality of leadership. When you have your hand clenched over your fist, it's because the broken places are impacting the individuals you lead. The fist is the people you're leading. Your hand is how you lead. So the more you're freer in your life, the easier for the people underneath you are able to be free. When you think about that, something that seems kind of common, we talk about it, but I'm going to drill this home. Let's talk about us. We may have some level of trauma in our life, right? But I'm going to focus on two levels of trauma that are commonplace and how this impacts leadership. So let's deal with one element called rejection. Let's say you really struggle with rejection. Now, you don't tell people I've been rejected unless you're dealing with a counselor or a therapist. It's not something that you wear as a badge of honor, like, oh, in my life, I really deal with rejection, right? Because rejection is the inward place. No one really knows how much you have experienced rejection in your life. It's only individually or eternally that we know that this rejection does exist. So let's say you deal with in rejection. A lot of us have experienced rejection. You may feel rejected by an absent parent. You may feel rejection because when you were born, it wasn't expected for you to be in the world, or you were like um, a prom baby. It doesn't matter. You have this level of rejection in your life, and or you've had your parents reject you. You didn't know your dad, or you didn't know your mom, and you went through different systems in which you feel like no one loved you and cared about you, but you're here now, right? You're here now as a leader, or you're here now as a parent, and you're here now leading other individuals, but in your heart, you have rejection. You have the hurt and pain of rejection. You have the shame and the embarrassment of rejection. How does it hurt you as a leader? Or how does it hurt you when you are leading individuals, or you have people who are looking for you for guidance, wisdom, understanding? When you have rejection, you have distorted thinking about certain things, right? Number one, you may believe that you are not as productive or as good as someone else. When you see people that seem to be excelling, it's very hard to see the good that you do. You're always pitting yourself against whatever vision you have of yourself because of this broken place of rejection. It's very difficult for you to see the good that you do because of self-negative talk. I'm not as good. I'm not going to be whatever I done. And it's even worse when you attach it to the spiritual, or it's based on your faith and your belief. Well, I done missed God's mark. You're always saying, I'll never live up to the way God wants me to live. And what happens is, because the root of rejection is there, it's hard for you to speak life over certain situations or see the positive in certain situations. How does it impact your people that you lead? If you feel rejected, or you always have something inside of you that has this internal turmoil that you're not as good, when you're leading people, and all leaders make mistakes or struggle or miss the mark, when you have people who are complaining against you, or have a complaint or constructive criticism, you internalize it. And then you lash out, or you say that everyone is a conspiracy, especially when you deal with rejection. Everything is a conspiracy against you. And it could be. People could say, oh, failure, whatever. But the issue isn't whether or not the outside world does it, it's how you internally deal with it, right? How do you internally deal when people are trying to compete against you? Well, if you have a spirit of rejection, you internalize and stop focusing on the good things, or sharpening your skills, or becoming the best you could possibly be. You spend all your time making calculated moves based on individuals that could or could not be inadvertently attacking you, right? I can give you a great example. There was a part of my life, let me back this up. When I'm not good inwardly as a leader, the people that I lead are not good. If I'm not good inwardly as a leader, the people that I lead are not good. I can look at times in my life where I was inwardly dealing with some things, and as a leader, it impacted the decisions that I was making, that impacted my team, right? So if I'm dealing with rejection and I'm struggling with that, or there's a part of me where I just don't feel good about what's happening in my life, and I don't feel that I'm accepted, and I feel rejected, or I feel like I'm a lone wolf, or no one understands me as a person, individual, and I really have a deep rooted heart of rejection, then I try to carry the entire team myself because I can control the narrative. I put myself in situations where I'm not creating ownership in the team. As a parent, if I'm dealing with rejection or feeling I'm good enough, it's hard to tell your child, how great they are and to encourage them to live out their dreams, you're struggling with the fear of them getting hurt like you did when you felt rejected. These are the elements that, as a leader leading families and teams, the reason why you have to deal with the broken places is that it jeopardizes your ability to effectively lead others. Rejection is one element. Rejection is twin with low self esteem. If I feel rejected and have low self esteem, they typically come together. If I'm really dealing with rejection and I have low self esteem, those two come together like a dynamic duo. So now I'm dealing with feeling rejected. And because I feel rejected, my self esteem is low. The self esteem part gives me the element of imposter syndrome. Now I'm really struggling because I have a position that I don't think I'm qualified for. I don't think I can be a good spouse. I can't be a good parent. I can't be a good leader. At some point, someone's going to see I'm a fraud. I'm not as good as it. Or I could be in a relationship and they may realize I'm not a good wife or I'm not a good husband. It develops into this murky thing that really robs us from being who we are, continuing the good work, and empowering the individuals around us to grow, right? Because if leadership covers people and you close it with a tight fist, and that tight fist is the broken places, because if I'm dealing with imposter syndrome and I'm dealing with rejection, I got to control this, right? But the more I get free and I understand who I am and operate in my gifts and talents, and I'm no longer functioning in the broken places, my grip on the people that I lead loosens up. My presence is still felt, but they are able to move and operate and do what they've been created to do. The more I got freer and came into my own and dealt with the broken places, the more I'm able to lead people into their gifts and talents. I don't have to control you. My responsibility is that my presence is felt. I'm able to nurture you to become the best leader you could possibly be. The same as relates to your children. The more I came into my own, the more that I was able to deal with the inward places in my life that was broken, the better father and a better husband I became. If I'm dealing with rejection and if I'm dealing with these areas in my life, it's really hard to deal with a spouse because every time they make a mistake or they do things that don't make me happy, when you deal with rejection, you focus your whole world on someone else making you happy, right? But in relationships, when my wife does things I don't necessarily like, I don't take it as rejection. I'm able to talk about it. We are able to address it and move forward. But if I'm rejected, there's two things that happen. I'll ignore it. I'll build up a case and then I'll argue with it and then I'll take it personal. I don't able to address the situation. And by the time I have addressed it, it's a situation that's been rooted into something that is far deeper. Even as a parent, if I'm dealing with elements of rejection or low self-esteem and I don't feel good about myself, it's hard to tell my child to feel good about themselves if they watch me every single day, never saying good about me. I'm not smart. I can't do this. But the more you tell your kid, like, "Yo, you know what?" And they hear you, right? They hear what you say. They model what you say. They model the things that you are doing in your life. So if your child says that I can't, here you say I can't, you know what? This is too hard for me. What happens is it becomes a part of their dialogue and it becomes a part of their mental ecosystem and becomes a part of their spirit. So now they're taking a point. Now that's going to be a whole teaching that'll happen in another month called Bloodlines. We talk about generational curses, but what ends up happening is it frames their thought process and how they operate and move, right? So all of a sudden they hear you say, I can't do, or I don't feel whatever. How many times do your children hear you say, man, I'm great. I'm going for greatness. I'm dope. I can do this. Look at me. I feel fly today. I'm looking good today. I'm feeling good, feeling great. We're about to make this happen. Do they see you spaz out? Now understand, you're a leader. Some of us have bosses that spaz out, right? Where is that coming from? Is it coming from an area in their life where they're struggling? Are they dealing with imposter syndrome? Are they afraid to lose their job because someone's going to realize that they're a fraud? Even in corporate America, there have been times where I realized that individuals who are leading and have positions and titles struggle with imposter syndrome. At some point, they're afraid that someone's going to realize that they're a fraud, or they're not as good as what they put in their resume, or they're not as good as the interview that they had. All of us deal with these secret places, and leadership and the part of spirituality of leadership is the fact that we lead from our gifts and talents, but we also lead from the broken places. The goal is to work on the broken places so that we're able to lead people into greatness and to lead them into places where they need to be. I want to start that conversation because last week I was going through some things, but I really want you to understand the concept that the hard work of leadership, or the hard work that all of us should be on a journey on, is to fix the broken places so that the individuals who we lead, regardless if it's the department, the company that you have, or the family that you live in, lead from a place where we begin to really, really work at addressing the broken places so we're able to free ourselves and other individuals who are looking towards us for leadership. All right. So let's really dive into week 2, which deals with personal organizational values and leadership. So the definition of values, we have to take values as personal values and organizational values. Personal values are your core beliefs that guide individual decisions and actions. In your heart, as you deal with the broken places, part of the process of growing is values. What are your core beliefs that guide you as an individual to make decisions and actions? Think about the broken places, because the more you deal with the broken places, the clearer your values become. So let's face, for instance, one of the things that I personally value is service to humanity, or helping and supporting. I really value that. I believe that people are important. People are important to me. It guides my decisions, how I operate with people as a person, as a leader. If I value people, in your workbook, I want you to start writing down what your values are. I value people. I value service to humanity, servant leadership. I value people. That is one of my core beliefs. I make decisions as a leader that ultimately deal with the good of the people I'm serving. So if I value that, how does it look in my home? I value the needs of not only my spouse, but also my child. I tend to put them first over myself. I make decisions based on the fact that I value them and I feel that I'm serving my family. I serve them and they serve others. I don't spend a lot of time expecting my wife and child to serve me. I serve them because that is a value that I have. I make decisions based on how it's core to me. How do I flip that into leadership of corporate America? If I value people, when I became a leader or decide to work for a company, I have to decide whether that company values people. If the company struggles with valuing people, it goes against my core beliefs. It doesn't mean you quit the next day, but at some point, you have to decide whether the company's values and your values match. Values are vital because I lead from my values. When I'm leading a department or anyone who has experienced my leadership, I value people. It doesn't matter who a person is. It doesn't matter their job and title. They have a seat at the table because I value what you say. I value your input. I value what you think, not about me, but whether or not I provided needed value to your life and to what I presented or how I'm leading. Now, here's a crutch. If I deal with rejection or low self-esteem, the problem is that I'm valuing my effort to help support the team, but I'm not trying to get from my team. What I have to work towards is not wanting my team to validate me. Growth is I value people, but if I'm leading from a broken place in my life, because I value and I serve people, oftentimes in leadership, if that's one of your core values, You're not necessarily leading people. You want people to co-sign you. You want to be people's friends. Oh, I'm very much a leader. I do have critical conversations. I do tell people when they're not doing things up to my level of expectations. But it took me growth because I core value people. It's a part of who I am as a person. But my growth was dealing with the broken places. I'm not looking for people who I lead to like me. I'm not looking for people that I lead to validate me as a person. I've learned how to co-sign myself. So the thing about it is that as you are leading people, your gifts and talents and your core beliefs become very important. Now, if you work for a company who doesn't value people, that becomes a conflict, right? So understanding that you have to define your core values. When you are leading, you should ensure that you're leading from those core values. When you are leading from those core values, it's easier for you to thrive and grow people because you're leading from an authentic place. Now, if you work for a company that doesn't value people, there are pretty over people. People are just a means to an end. My industry, the industry that I work in, I can't do anything without people. I can't do anything without the people underneath me. So I have to ensure that they're good so that I'm good and then I'm able to push the agenda forward. Some industries, especially in detail manufacturing, don't really care about people as much. They think you should do your job. How many people have heard bosses say that? You get paid, you should just do your job. If you're paying some person, they should do their job. I get it. But at the end of the day, leadership requires to figure out why they are not able to do their job. What can you do to add value to their life to get them in a position to do their job? And if they can't do their job, it's okay to replace them. I've had some of the best resignations of individuals because I work with them. I try to help them. But at the end of the day, the critical conversation, this is not a good place for you. I'll help you along the way to find something that's more meaningful for you, but this is not going to work. And it's okay for that. But understanding that the ultimate thing, whatever your core belief, you lead from that place. So, why is this important? Values are the foundations of authenticity and trust. If you are not living from your core values, you're not going to be authentic, and individuals around you will not trust you. If you're false being nice or you're false being kind and you're saying the right thing, eventually everyone knows that is not authentically who you are. And because you're not authentic, you will never be trusted. If someone knows you're afraid of heights and you tell them to chase the mountain and they know you are not authentic because you are scared of heights, they won't follow you up the mountain because they will never trust you. Some of us have had bosses, supervisors, people in our lives where you know who they truly were and you couldn't follow them because you didn't trust them. You can think about a relationship you may have had. They painted a good picture. You start getting involved in a relationship. Uh, yeah, that's a good one too. Um, they serve their true self and you start not trusting them. If you don't lead from your values, you don't trust yourself. Learning how to lead from your values is critically important. Being authentic to your values is critically important for those that you lead. You never want to be in a position where your core values are not front and center in your life. Okay. If you don't have clear values, decision making will be impacted. Your decisions will be impacted based upon your values. I value people. I make decisions based upon people. Now, if I value productivity and don't care about people, or I pretend to care about people, but really in my heart, I'm really about productivity, I'll tell someone, take the day off, go spend time with your family, but I put a note in my notebook. Oh, they don't like to work real hard. So when they come back to work, I'm going to treat them some kind of way, or I'm going to find fault in them why they left. Because at the end of the day, I acted like I cared about them individually, but I really didn't. It's false values. And what happens is, how many people have ever had that? A boss tells you to take off, your boss tells you to take off. Oh, take care of yourself. Your mental health is important. And then when you come back, they treat you just as bad when you came back than when you left. Because you asked them, I don't feel good today. I need to go home. But when you came back, it's like the work you had was double and they found something to be negative about when you came back after they told you to go home. Have you ever had that happen before? Probably so, yes. It happens, right? They act like they care about you. They say that your mental health is important, but when you come back after the day they told you to go, they want to have a critical conversation about something you're not doing right, right? So when you think about that, if I value people and I say, hey, take a day off, we'll come back and revisit this on when you come back. I didn't spend that time trying to figure out why you took a day off. I really cared about your well-being because I know we have a relationship that you're going to get the end game because we've worked towards that and you understand the expectations. Alignment of values with actions fosters credibility and integrity. There are a lot of people who are not living their values and it's costing them their credibility and integrity. We talked about credibility and integrity last week. Credibility and integrity are vital. It's more important to me that I have a level of credibility and integrity than to be liked. I want people to understand that I'm credible. I am who I am. I say what I mean. I live my core values. When I make mistakes, I apologize. Even if I'm not in a good space and I made a wrong decision, I own that because credibility and integrity are important to me. Having people who look to me for leadership means I can get more productivity from them when they understand I built credibility and integrity with them. Over time, the reason if I say we need to go right, they trust my ability to go right. They don't question me asking for right because I've developed credibility and integrity with them because I've led through my core values. I've modeled my core values. I've tried to share with them my core values. So that's important. So this week, I want you to work towards reflecting on your values and your roles in leadership. It could be as a parent, for an organization, or what are your core values? How you're leading your team, implementing your role as a parent or spouse. How are your core values align to your personal or organizational values? Systems or tools to ensure that you are sustaining those values. How do you create systems and tools to sustain those values? How are you creating the environment in your house and your home, your company, your organization, with your team that is based upon sustaining those core values that are important to you as you lead them forward? Okay. So now let's shift to understanding your personal values. Your personal values influence your decisions, interactions, and your priorities. The consequences of being out of alignment with your personal values will impact everything in your life. So even your personal values influence decisions, interactions, and priorities. For example, if you value family, those decisions you make will be based on those who have, but prioritize them. But if it's your core beliefs, how do you make decisions based on those priorities? And what happens when you make decisions that are out of aligning with those core values? Here's an example, and you see it oftentimes in movies, but I've seen it happen in real life, especially in leadership. There are times in my career and in my life that I had to make vital decisions based upon my core values and not necessarily based upon at that time what I thought was going to be the best thing for myself, right? So here's an example. An opportunity comes your way that appears to be a once in a lifetime opportunity comes your way that's a once in a lifetime opportunity, but it impacts your core values about your family. A good example is you really believe in family and all your kids are young, but the job that you have always wanted to have requires you to spend a week at home and 4 weeks out the state, and all your kids are young. If you value family, but this seems like this is going to be a dream job, making you a lot of money, changing your kids with this new job. And this job is laid at your feet in the most inopportune time in your life where you feel like, man, if I don't take it, but your core value says that family comes first. Now, this test is put before your feet. If you take it, you know you'll be spend a week at home and 3 weeks out of state, seeing your kids through Zoom and television. There's consequences for those actions. Who's to say that it's not going to work or not? If your core value is home and you are put in a situation where you have to choose based on your value system and you choose family, you can typically live with yourself. I've had that happen to me numerous times. Opportunities came and I thought I really wanted them, but they went against my core values. This week, I want you to listen or self-talk or journal about time of your life where you've had to make a decision like that. And if you chose the route of your core values, how did it make you feel when you made that decision? If you chose to go against your core values, how did it feel when you have to live in that decision? I've done it both ways. I've chosen things that went against my core values, and it was not a good situation. I've chosen decisions that were based upon my core values. I can tell you from a personal note how choosing your core values every single time gives you the peace about the decisions that you made versus going against your core values. And it's really good because we can always justify it like, oh, this seems like this is a blessing, Lord. But in your heart, you already know this is not what it's supposed to happen. So this week, I want you to kind of work through that process. How did it make you feel as a leader? You have to make a decision based upon your core values. Um, I've had to let people go that are really believed in their potential. How did it make you feel? What did you learn from that experience? And can you use that experience as an opportunity to use it as a guidepost? And I did. For since my career, I've been able to use those decisions when I made the right decision about my core values as spiritual and emotional guideposts. When situations come and I have to make a decision, I typically use those markers along my life to say, this has never failed me when I chose this direction. I'll go the direction where my core values are and lead from that and be willing to accept the consequences of choosing something that I feel is right for me. Now, we have a lot to cover, and I want to leave time the next 15 minutes for questions and answers. So this week, I really want you guys to go through the workbook. I want you to talk about values in your leadership practices. How does it benefit the alignments and identifying misalignments in your life? Talk about if you're in an organization, talk about your organizational values. I'm not saying the outward mission statement, but what you see and feel, the spiritual or cultural elements that can't be written on paper. What are those things? And whether or not they're connected or living up to their cultural expectations. Once you walk through that process individually. Spend some week, and it's in your workbook, developing strategies for building up your value systems. What things can you put in place? There's some personal things that I suggest you do. Definitely, I spend a lot of time meditation and praying. You're journaling. If you journaling, do you have people who you work with or you connect with that will help you work through those processes through the inward work? But this week, go through this because next week we're gonna have a special surprise. But next week, the surprise I'm not finished with it yet. You'll have a special surprise next week, and on top of that, you're not going to want to miss it because it's going to tie into the spirituality and leadership. We talked a lot about personal vision, but we're going to talk at a higher level about things that happen in corporations and companies to deal with the spirituality. So you don't want to miss it. Um, I'm going to open it up for questions. If you want to ask questions or you have comments, definitely the time is now. I can answer your questions for the next remaining minutes. Credibility is really rooted in integrity. Integrity is being very consistent in your actions and the values that you live on a day-to-day basis. And what happens is it develops a bank account, right? A bank account. Credibility is something that is earned. It's not something that happens overnight. Dealing with individuals, deposits in the lives of people, deposits in the lives of individuals is all rooted in credibility, right? So every time I deposit it in someone's life, I'm bringing credibility to that. So at some given point of time, when I ask for a withdrawal, my account is good. Integrity allows for me to constantly deposit in the lives of individuals over and over again through integrity. But then what happens, I develop a level of credibility. So for example, if a person is a habitual liar, their credit's not good. They can't be trusted. If a person's word is not good, you lose credibility. If a person doesn't show up, they lose credibility. If a person doesn't even ask for an apology, their credit is bad. Credibility is something that you build up over time. People think that you don't build credibility with your kids. You do. People don't think you build credibility with your spouse. You do. You build credibility with every human being based on your actions and core beliefs and values. You develop credibility over time. But when you talk about credibility, it's really one of those things built up over time. It doesn't happen overnight. It comes with constantly depositing into other individuals, and it helps to build credibility. It can be through actions, through deeds. It's hard to trust someone that always blows up, is negative all the time, mean and nasty. Their credibility is shot. I yesterday spent time talking to some great leaders at a training and teaching them. And I said to them, oftentimes we expect things from other people that we don't even expect for ourselves. We have a litany of things that we expect someone to do for us, but we will never do it for anyone else. And then we wonder why our credit's not good with people, because you expect someone to do something that you're not unwilling to do for yourself. Work towards your credibility with people. Being who you are, kindness, love, sowing into the lives of people. One thing about me, it's easier for me to develop credibility because I value people. I value people. So it's easy for me to develop that credibility because I'm constantly showing that I want to have good credit with people. So when I ask people to do something, it's easier for them to do something for me because of the level of credibility. Anyone else? Any more questions? Josh, if you're on, I'll send you a link to the workbook as well. I'll send it to you. I'll put it in the chat. It says, any more questions? Cool. All right. Thank you for joining us. If you go to our website, Avodah Dynamics, there's a link that says register for next week. This is for weeks of the spirituality of leadership. If you register and you didn't get the workbook, I'll send you the workbook as a link and you'll have it for next week. Invite someone. I really appreciate you being here today. Hopefully it provided benefit. If you have any more questions, I will answer them. This is Spirituality and Leadership. We'll go over part 3 next week. Brandy asked the question, part 3 next week, and I'll answer that. How do you build your core values? Identify them first and then work towards them. It's a work in progress, and I'll address that in greater detail next week. Brandy, identify them first, then making sure that your life starts aligning with them, and then you'll start, and then we'll talk about the kind of phase 2 of that process. How do you build your core values? So next week, make sure you invite someone. This is free. I'm not charging, but I have a special surprise for anyone who joins me. Hopefully this has been beneficial, helpful. And like I said, for those on here, I'll send you out the workbook. It was in the chat today, but I'll make sure everyone on the call today will have it for next week. So invite someone. Next week, we'll cover part 3, and then we have another week after that, but special surprise. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, and enjoy your Saturday and digging out snow, especially if you're in the Midwest. I love you guys. Have a good week. Bye.